In previous videos, we have talked a great deal about equipment operation and a little bit of safety. This video is going to be centered primarily on safety, so that we can look at some of the different tools in the shop. We won't get all of them on this video, but we will get enough of them. And you'll have a much better idea of what it's going to take to operate each one of these tools safely, plus a lot of general safety precautions that we take in the shop, no matter where we are or what tool we're using. The first one is safety glasses. Your safety glasses are worn at all times in the shop. If you're anywhere near work that's being done by others, you still need to have your safety glasses on. When it comes to oily rags, from time to time we will have oil on rags, WD-40, things of that nature. And those do not go in the regular trash can. They go in the red metal trash can that's normally by the door. So anytime you have a rag or a paper towel that's got anything that's oily or flammable, then you put it in the red trash can. We can talk a little bit more about general stuff. There's a lot of talk about the most dangerous tool in the shop. Well, in my opinion, the most dangerous tool in the shop is a dull one. So it's very important that we keep tools sharp. They will work better for us, they work easier for us, and they'll actually do a much better job. So it's important to keep all of the tools sharp. When it comes to actually working on the machines, we're talking primarily about the machines that have a blade. They would be the table saw, the joiner, the planer, the bandsaw. These tools, if you have to make any kind of adjustments on them, you turn the main power off first. Then you make your adjustments. The same thing if you're changing a blade. You would never change the blade on a table saw without turning that main disconnect power off. And that way it's going to be much safer for you to operate that way. And another thing, if you're operating in the shop at any point throughout this entire semester, and if you come to a point where you're not sure about some procedure with a tool, or anything about a tool that you need to use in fabricating one of your projects, anytime you're not sure, ask. Come to me and ask me, what do I do here with this? And I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. One of the biggest mistakes you can make in this shop is to have heard it before, you're embarrassed that you don't remember, and you try to fake it. That will get you hurt. And we just don't want that. If you're not sure, then ask. And I'll be more than happy to show you exactly how to do it. Now that's going to cover most of the general safety rules in the shop. The rest of the video will actually be going from machine to machine, and we'll cover all of the safety rules for each one of those machines. Okay, now the first tool we'll talk about here in specifics is the table saw. The thing you need to remember about the table saw is you never let your fingers get within 6 inches of that blade. If you're trying to make a cut that is less than 6 inches, then you need to have some kind of help that's going to keep your fingers 6 inches away from that blade. And in this shop we use mostly push sticks to do that. We have a number of different styles. We've seen those already. But you use a push stick to keep your fingers the correct distance away from that blade. The second thing is the blade height. When you adjust the blade height, you want it at least just enough to clear the top of the material. About 1/8 of an inch is enough. It's not something you have to measure. You can just use the tooth height, one tooth above the material. is about 1/8 of an inch. So we always want to pay attention to not only the distance that we're going to keep our hands away from the blade, but also the actual blade height. We need just enough of that blade to come through the material to complete the cut. We don't need to go any more than that. Now, another thing that we need to remember about that blade is the most dangerous aspect about this tool is kickbacks. And you need to always remember that kickbacks occur on the back of the blade, not the sides, not the front. It is the back of the blade that generates a kickback. And you also need to remember that when you're finished, when you're done making your cuts, you lower that blade all the way back down and you turn off the main power on the machine. And the last thing I have on the table saw is you need to understand that there's no such thing as a freehand cut on a table saw. To make a cut, you always have to have your material either against the fence, held against a miter gauge or a jig. It has to be supported by something. You simply don't run a piece of wood through a table saw ever freehand. And that'll cover it for the table saw, and we'll look at the next tool in the next segment. Okay, now we'll take a look at the joiner. The joiner is a fairly simple tool, and it's well protected. The guard on this machine does a very good job of keeping your fingers off that blade. But you do have to pay close attention. We talked about what I call joiner thumb, where you get your thumb down low as you're pushing a piece of wood through here, and you wind up getting your thumb into the blade and taking off a chunk of the thumb. If the piece is high enough to where you can push it above the fence, then you don't need a push stick. If it gets down lower than that, then yeah, you need a push stick. We have all different styles that you can choose from to push your work through here. The really important thing about this machine is you cannot joint short pieces. You can't run a piece through here that's less than 12 inches long. So it's not for really short pieces of wood. There's other ways that are much safer to put a good edge on the short pieces. Don't use a joiner to do it. The feed rate is important, and it varies from species to species. The harder the wood, the slower you need to push it through. The important thing is to use a moderate feed rate that's consistent for the entire piece of wood. You don't want to go fast for one section, slow for the next, speed up again, slow down. It needs to be a consistent feed rate. And after you've used a joiner for a while, you'll come to understand exactly what that feed rate should be between the softer and the harder woods. Now, like all of the machines that have a blade, you want to turn off the main power disconnect when you finish using it. And that would be it for the joiner. We'll look at another tool in just a moment in the next segment. Now, the edge sander is also a very easy machine to operate, and there's not much to it when it comes to safety. You just want to make sure you keep your fingers off the belt. And you would inspect that belt. You can just spin it by hand before you start it, and just inspect the belt to see if there's any damage to it before you turn the machine on. And then when you're actually putting a piece of wood up, remember the most important thing is to get the entire piece up close, then engage the right side before the left side. That's very important. It avoids damage to the belt, and it can avoid damage to you. Engage the right side first, then the left. And that's about all there is to safely operating the edge sander. Okay, now we're going to talk just for a minute about the bandsaw. The most important thing about that bandsaw is to simply keep your fingers away from that blade. There's a couple of ways that you can do that. You use the blade guard. You can move that up and down. The thicker the material, the higher the guard has to be. You want it as low as you can get it and still make the cut safely. You need to be able to see clearly how the blade enters the piece of wood you're trying to cut. You don't want to put it down so low that you have to lean over and get in a bad body position to be able to see under the guard. So this can be up an inch or so above the top of the work. But the most important thing, that it be in a position where you can see clear enough to make the cut you intend to make. And like all bladed tools, you want to turn the main power off when you're finished using it. The other thing is how close you can actually get your fingers to the blade. On the table saw, it's 6 inches. But a lot of times you're cutting a piece of wood that's not 6 inches wide. So with the bandsaw, you can actually get your fingers within 2 inches of the blade and still be safe. It's important to keep your fingers to the side of the blade so that when you're pushing the wood through, your fingers are going this way. You don't want to put your fingers on top of the work and push it into where your fingers are moving toward the front of that blade. Try to hold your fingers off to the side. And again, you can use push sticks on a bandsaw as well as you can on the other bladed tools. And that would just about cover everything that we need, other than the fact that most of these machines are hooked to the dust collector. If you're going to use one of these machines, make sure that the dust collector is on before you turn it on and start making your cut. And that's going to be just about it for this video. We will cover a lot of the other tools and a lot of other safety things in later videos. But for now, that's going to be just about it.